Hello, and welcome to Broads and Books. I'm Amy.
And I'm Erin, and this is a special Broads and Books bonus episode.
Today on the Broads Talk Books with, we've got Chelsea G. Summers, author of A Certain Hunger.
Which, let's be honest,
Yeah.
was the doozy of all cannibal books.
Yeah.
If that's a thing.
If there is such a thing, then it would be the doozy of them all.
It
Yes.
really deserves its own category.
It really does. The cannibal category in the bookstore.
Yes.
Yeah, and if not, there should be, because this was like foodie, murder, deviant heaven. Just like a
was.
holy trinity of those three things.
Just perfection, really. If you could say that cannibalism is perfection, it would be this book. So to say we were pumped for this interview is probably putting it mildly.
Real pumped.
So pumped.
Very pumped. And man, did she deliver. Chelsea was hilarious, surprising, wonderful. It was just everything.
It was great. We talk about her goth relationship with a few childhood books, how she's looking for murder and magic in her reading, which celebrities she thinks would love her book, and how she can't wait to pet her book in a bookstore.
And by the way, update on that. Like, since the
did.
interview, she got to go to a bookstore, pet the books in the bookstore.
And from the pictures, I'm hoping it was as fulfilling as it should have been.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
we both agreed that book feels nice.
Yeah, feels real nice. So there's so much wit and humor in this interview. You're going to love it. And we've put all the books that Chelsea mentions in the show notes so you can add them all to your TBR pile.
And now, here's our interview with Chelsea G. Summers.
When you were growing up, do you remember a specific book, a couple specific books that you really enjoyed that really maybe helped you become the person you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the most formative set of books were the Wizard of Oz books, which I read on kind of infinite repeat. And then I had this, I would guess from the 50s, so it must have been my parents, like maybe even from the 40s, book of fairy tales that had this like line drawing of a witch on the cover. It was it was leather. It was, the whole like witchy fairy tale 9, and it was, it was the original Grimm's, and that I probably didn't read as much as the Wizard of Oz, but I had a very fraught relationship with this book as an object as well as as a book. I was deeply disturbed and massively drawn to it. So I would carry it around with me and periodically like hide it in the woods for a week because it started to freak me out too much. And then I'd go back and like uncover it from this like mossy area, and it would be perfectly fine and pristine and no bugs or mold or anything, and bring it home and start reading it again. And so I had I had this incredibly vexed relationship with this book. And then I guess the third text would be Hamlet. My mom was a costumer, and like my biological father did lighting design. So, I was born when my mom was like 19, so she was still really into all of that stuff, and she was graduating college when I was a little kid. So we did a lot of, and of course she was an English major. So we did a lot of like Shakespeare festivals, and Hamlet was something that she started reading to me when I was probably 4 or 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I saw,
Very cool.
I saw Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet in the theaters when it came out in 1967, whatever. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was very much a no holds barred with the bard. And like being a pretentious kid and growing, and eventually lived in Vermont, and I was like 9 or 10, and we had this cemetery next to our house, and I memorized like 5 of Hamlet's soliloquies, and I'd like wander among the graves, like saying them out loud and picking wild strawberries and eating them. I mean, it's just like, I was goth before there was goth.
It's
But yeah.
fantastic.
This is amazing. Oh my
There's so
gosh.
many images already I want to
I know. Just the book alone, taking that and putting it in the woods and then going back to it. Love that so much. Oh my gosh. Well, one of the other things that we've talked about a few times on the podcast is that at different points, readers have mentioned that a classic maybe impeded their reading progress. They struggled with it, or it was presented too early. Do you remember a classic that you struggled with?
Yeah. So, both of my parents were and still are enormous readers, and they gave me Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility when I was like 12. And I started it, and I was just like, "Fuck this," you know. Like I'm just like, no way am I reading fucking Austen. Like, what is this shit? Um, but kind of ironically, like the same year, it might have been like my 13th birthday. My dad also gave me Marjorie Morningstar. Like, what? Yeah, so I was 13 and I read Marjorie Morningstar. I'm like, this is awesome. And it completely messed me up for like decades. Um, and for a long time I was just like walking around like I'm so, here I am like 14. I'm like, I'm so full of potential and it's just wasted, Like I'm
Man,
like,
you were an
I really
interesting kid. Yeah.
yeah, no, yeah, I spent a lot. I was an only child, so I spent a lot of time by myself.
Hmm.
But yeah, so then there are other books like as I got older that I feel bad about, but I've never finished. Um, like have never made it past the first chapter of Moby Dick, and I never
That's
will. I mean, I
ours.
don't care.
Yeah.
That's
I
ours.
don't
Yeah.
care how many people tell me it's amazing. I just like I, I don't like Melville. I don't like anything about Melville. Nothing about Melville is good to me. And bless everybody who enjoys it. It's just not my jam, and they can knock themselves out.
That's always the
Agreed.
one that we talk about when we talk about
Mhm.
this
My
because yeah.
my absolute least favorite kind of author of classics,
Mhm.
however, and this I discovered in graduate school because I managed to steer clear my entire childhood, is James Fenimore Cooper. James
Mm.
Fenimore Cooper can suck my whole asshole. He is such a poser, phony, full of shit, like bullshit, white male author
Mhm,
writing all of
mhm.
his Natty Bumpo stories from the comfort of his Paris apartment. Like, eat me. Like, just,
Yeah.
yeah.
That is really how we should describe all the white male canon, Aaron, is just suck my
Yeah.
asshole. Yeah.
You can suck my entire asshole,
Yeah,
not a
the
part, the
entire one.
entire
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, to quote Jay-Z, yes.
yeah. Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, thinking about, okay, so there were some books that really, struck a chord with you. There were some that you struggled with, obviously, but are there some when you were younger or as you got older that particularly made you think, I want to do this? I want to write. I want to be an author.
Um, I think I wrote my first story, which was a highly plagiarized uh, book. Um, it was like like Mr. and Mrs. Strawberry Head, something to. It was like my grandmother had this French book that was about these two strawberries living together and having baby strawberries. I don't know. And I wrote my own version of it. Like when I was like 5. And I wrote a play that was actually produced and when I was in high school. It was a total Tom Stoppard ripoff. Um, and then like I think I had my first piece published when I was like 15 or 16. And then, but I always wanted to be a writer. I just never thought of myself as anybody who could do it. And, in all fairness to myself, I was such a fuck up through my 20s and even into my 30s that, like, the fact that I didn't really get it together to start writing till I was, no longer, well, I was in graduate school, I was in my 40s, and I couldn't write I had writer's block with my dissertation, but I could write other stuff. And so that was a thing that really got me to start writing and to start thinking of myself as a writer. But so it's really only been about a little over a decade. I'm still an emerging writer, even though I'm 58.
Well, I love to hear it. I have my first book coming out this year, and I'm 43.
Oh,
So it's one of those things.
congrats.
Yeah, like yeah, you just come to it later.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of respect for people who can, put a book out every year, like Laura Lippman and Jamie Attenberg, and that's great. I really respect them. I'm not that person.
Yeah.
I am more like Donna Tartt. Like it's gonna take me another few years to get my shit together to do the next one. Yeah. I'm
Definitely.
very lazy. I'm incredibly, incredibly lazy. And what I'd really like to do is just procrastinate. Like if somebody could just pay me to procrastinate, that would be ideal.
Oh my God. Then you would need to share that secret with us because I want to
Yeah.
do that.
Exactly.
I want to
Yeah.
get paid for that.
Uh-huh.
I'm like the queen of making lists and then figuring out how not to do the list. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm so organized. I did this list and that's it.
Boom. Yeah, that's
Never
all you
need to do
need.
anything on the list. Just
And
made it.
we're done.
What a day. What a day. Well, thinking about your reading now, how many books would you say are on your to be read pile? And are there a few that you can share?
We love this so much because it's always people are like, oh God.
Because my apartment's in New York. I'm going home to pack it up in a couple of days. And I've been living in Sweden for the past 8-9 months. Most of my books are on Kindle. Because I don't want to be schlepping things, and it's a really excellent way to forget what you've bought. I have I probably have conservatively 300 books on my to be read pile. I am a strange reader in that I go in bursts. I have a hard time finding things that really capture my imagination. I read a lot of nonfiction because I have a hard time with novels that don't make me want to devour them. It's one of the reasons why I really love Megan Abbott is that there's nothing that I've started that I haven't been like, okay, I just want to be up all night reading this, and then when it's over, I'm like, no, it's over, and there's another dead body. So basically, if a book doesn't have some kind of crime, or I'm not great with books about people walking and talking and growing and doing things. So like a rare, Jamie is one of the rare family, kind of family based walking, talking, no killing, no magic, that I can read and not get horrifically bored by. But yeah, most of my stuff, there's every story is a crime story. Not that I consider myself a crime writer, just that's I like deviance.
Yeah.
So I would say that's most of, and right now, I just finished Mexican Gothic, which I really loved the first 2/3 of. And that's all I'm going to say. I loved the first 2/3, and then, because I don't want to,
bummer.
for people who haven't read it, I don't want to rip the rug out. So, and now I'm reading this nonfiction book called Don't Call It a Cult, about the Nexium, which of course is really, I'm just,
boy.
like cult writing is just like, oh, please let me just, dive into a pool. It's just really, it's very weird.
Wow.
And then so I read Lee Cowart's, an arc of Lee Cowart's book on pain, whose title is escaping me. It's her debut nonfiction book. She's a science and sometimes sex writer, and also baseball. And she's a former ballet dancer who also is a self-avowed masochist. So she
There's a
does
there's a lot
yeah.
going on.
So she does, yeah. So the whole book is a study of how pain affects different people differently, what it does for us, why people search it out, like how there are different kinds of pain. Like there's one chapter on eating California Reapers. There's another chapter on the longest, hardest ultra marathon in, like, I think it's in the hills of Tennessee. So I read that shortly, not that long ago. And what did I read? I guess I read one of the Megan Abbott gymnastics book because I hadn't read that. So yeah, I mean, I kind of leap around and
Yeah.
frequently I'll start something and I don't finish it. I have a lot of abandoned books.
We do the same. Yeah. Which is something that took us a
Yeah,
while, I think, to get to. But
yeah. I mean, I don't feel bad when people abandon my book. But it does piss me off when they rate it and they didn't finish it. Like, I only got through
Yeah.
7 chapters. I'm giving it 2 stars. Oh, yeah? Come here and give it 2 stars. Like, you know, like if you're going to
Say
give
it
it
to
2
my
stars,
face.
fine.
Yeah.
Like fine. That's your prerogative and that's
Mhm.
totally cool. Whatever. But don't like fucking abandon the book, and then be like,
Yeah.
2
I
stars.
only
Yeah.
read like the first 2 chapters, 1 star. Like, bite me.
Ugh. It sounds like some of the books that you really get into revolve around crime. Do you like when a story like that surprises you? Do you like when a story like that you can kind of see where it's going?
I'm not a cozy person.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm cozy in my real life. I don't have any desire to be cozy in my fantasy life.
Mhm.
So,
Good way to put it.
Yeah.
like surprise me.
Yeah.
That's an excellent
You
way to put
know,
it. Yeah.
but there's also the craft, like
Mhm.
how are this, on the sentence level, on the paragraph level, what are you able to do? And, if it's fiction, like how are you able to tell the story? Like what's the narrative arc and what works in it? Like how is that captivating? Like
Mhm.
what's, you know, I tend to think of books in terms of having shapes like buildings,
Mm.
or personalities like interiors of rooms. So like what is it that what's the building feel like when I'm in it? How do the rooms telescope? How am I moving from one room into the next room? Like or like a road trip, or so I am interested, as well as, it's not just the story, but it's also like on the micro level and also on the macro level. I didn't do an MFA, like I didn't have any. I didn't like I did graduate school in literature, but I think my last like creative writing class was, I don't know, at some point in the 90s. So I don't have formal training in how you put together novels or stories. Um, so I do, when I read, a lot of times I'm also reading on the secondary level for craft.
Yeah.
Is there a book recently that you feel like has surprised you, either craft wise or just narrative wise? What happened?
I read the Alma Katsu's Titanic book not that long ago. I forget what it's called. Um, and I really liked her ability to blend historical fact with a supernatural element.
Mm.
And that was unexpected. I wasn't really sure what I was getting when I went into it, but I really thought she did a really fascinating job with that. I guess, I mean, I know everybody talks about Roxane Gay as a nonfiction writer, and I'm one of those weird people who doesn't love her nonfiction,
Mm.
but I do. Like Untamed State was one of the most beautifully crafted, wonderfully put together books that I have read in the past decade. And I probably think about it a few times a week.
Wow.
That was a
Wow.
book that really left an impression in terms of the narrative and the plotting and how it all dovetailed really um, seamlessly with the character. So yeah, I would say
Wow.
that was one of the ones that's impressed me the most in recent history.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, as we told you, we recommended A Certain Hunger in a recent episode. And
Hmm.
wondering, especially with this conversation around the books that you like and the books that you take things from, were there specific authors or books that you think particularly inspired your writing of
Oh
that
yeah,
book?
there were two. I mean,
Yeah.
I wrote about it in the acknowledgments. Yeah, there were two that absolutely, like I read very early on in the writing process and then just sort of let it stew in my unconscious. And those were Eat, Pray, Love.
Mm.
Um, and I only got through Eat and Pray, and I bailed before Love. It was just like, I have had enough. This is
Got the eat
what
part.
I got.
Forget the.
I got the eat part, I got the pray part, and now like I'm done. I actually owe a huge debt to Elizabeth Gilbert, not just because of Eat, Pray, Love, which I hated, but because she did a TED talk on, and I can't believe these are words that I'm putting together in something that can be recorded. But she did a TED talk on creativity and her anxiety about writing something after Eat, Pray, Love. And everyone was like, "Ooh, Eat, Pray, Love, so big. What are you gonna do next?" And she kind of went to the Greek model and talked about the daemon. Like if you are creating something and it's bad, well, it's your daemon, and if it's good, well, it's your daemon. So you are divorced from the actual, creative product. You are
Interesting.
like you're channeling it, and I found that super duper helpful. And I put it together with like his dark materials, and so every time I sat down, I imagined a red bearded vulture next to me, my daemon, who would
Perfect.
tell me what to write next. And then the other, and
Amazing.
and I should say like. Elizabeth Gilbert has written some of my favorite pieces of journalism. She, her Coyote Ugly piece. Um, she wrote a piece on, it was a profile of a winemaker that Serge Hochar, whom I adore. He died a couple of years ago. Um, and then the other book was American Psycho, which I had read
Sure.
when it first came out, like, because Bret Easton Ellis and I are about the same age.
Mhm.
So it came out, I read it, and then I read it again as I was going to write this book in like, I think it was like the summer of 2011. And then I didn't go near any American Psycho media, not the movie, not the musical, not the serial, not the action figures. Yeah.
Was there actually a musical?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, there
Oh my
was. There was
God.
oh yeah. No, there
Didn't
really was.
realize that.
Oh,
Oh
I didn't
yeah.
know
No,
that either. Oh,
I am
wow.
not
Huh.
why I would never kid about an American Psycho musical. You can look
Okay.
it up.
Yep, just checking.
Yeah,
Would never
sure.
kid about.
Here to
I'm still
help.
back on the Eat, Pray, Love. I want that quote to be on the front of the book. I got through Eat and Pray, but failed on Love.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I don't really do well with fiction for women or like books for women. Like I don't
Sure.
care. I don't
Yeah.
care.
Mhm.
Like my vagina does not read.
That's true. Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Well, one of the things we like to ask, and we've gotten different responses now, being in a pandemic. But do you have a most memorable fan interaction?
I haven't, like I haven't had any because I this book came out while I was in Sweden,
Mhm.
and so I haven't had that experience of going into a bookstore and being like, "Oh, what a beautiful
Doesn't this
book
look
is
good?
this?" That this book that I wrote. And because of that also I haven't had any like I haven't had any, events.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of times that there were people who came to readings before the book was, like before I was an author, when I was still just a writer, and predominantly a sex writer. And, there were people who came up and told me how great and asked me to sign things. And I'm like, okay, fine, I guess. Sure. What do you have? Um, but I'm really I'm really looking forward to the good, the big fan experience. I mean, I really love the TikToks, like the TikTok videos. So like there have been like 4, and those bring me inordinate happiness. It's really nice seeing it on Instagram because I can't see it in real life. There are no bookstores in Sweden that have it in person. You can order it. So I haven't had, and there's one library here. It's in Göteborg and Gothenburg that has it. So I could theoretically drive 5.5 hours and go see it. Be like, can I just see the book? So yeah, like I really desperately, because I am this shallow, want somebody famous to praise my book. Like
Of course you
if
do.
I mean, like if Lena Headey would just get on it and read the book, or
Yes.
Tessa Thompson, or Charlize
Yes.
Theron, like just, I mean, there are just so many people I would love to have,
That's not
just
shallow. That should
say
be a
they like the book.
reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm still, my fingers are crossed for that
Well,
eventually.
that's exciting though, that when you go to New York, you could go to a bookstore
Yeah,
and see it,
Yeah.
and that'll be
I
cool.
most assuredly will be going to a bookstore to pet the book.
As you should.
Yours is very
Yeah.
pettable too. I mean,
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
we're not monsters, so we take the dust jacket off. And I took it off
Yes.
to read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. It was so that
Yeah.
smooth. It's different than, that cloth cover. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
Yeah,
like a
it's
good
nice.
cover
Both
under.
both the dust jacket and the book feel nice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
got a really nice
And I'm
texture.
very happy because both of them have an anatomical heart. And then the book has my initials. It says
Mhm.
CGS, which I don't know why, but I really
But
love it.
yeah, it feels very
Yeah.
personal, and wow.
It's a really nice object.
Mhm.
I want you to touch all of
I
them.
want you to touch all of them.
Yeah.
Just go into a
Yeah,
pile.
just
Yeah.
lick them,
And then hand it to somebody and be like, look, I'm the author. I like
Yeah,
this.
here, I licked this for you.
yeah, and it's got my DNA.
Yeah. Hold on to that.
Yeah. Do you think, and maybe this has already happened, or maybe this will happen once you get back to New York, are there particular authors that you have wanted to meet over your time writing and you got to meet, or people that you're looking forward to meet?
So, I mean, I've been, Megan blurbed my book, but I've never met her. So I look forward to meeting her. She's in
Yeah.
Queens. I don't really have that thing where I feel the need to meet writers necessarily. If they come into my orbit, that's
Mhm.
awesome. But frequently I like to have books divorced from the people who wrote it. I don't need to know what their voice sounds like. And often I have seen people talk about their books and been like, wow, that was really awful. Like that was just profoundly unpleasant, and I really regret doing that.
Is the
So
risk. Yeah.
yeah, it's a risk. It's a risk. I mean, and I'm very fortunate to have writers whom I wildly respect in my life who are good friends. Like Sarah Weinman, who's just been on your show, is a friend of mine, and
Yes. Oh.
Molly Crabapple is a really good friend of mine, and like Lori Penny is a really good friend of mine, and like I'm very fortunate to have people who are writers that I can text
Wonderful.
at most hours of the day.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
nice.
And I think if you don't live in New York, if you don't run in a certain, kind of circle, like Twitter circle, it can be harder.
Mhm.
But because I do, I've been really fortunate.
How would you say that your reading has changed since you became an author?
I read a lot less.
Yeah, yeah.
I read a lot less. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think really part of it for me, like Trump and the pandemic. I know most people read more. I really didn't. I read less.
So do we.
You did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
I
read
we
just,
less
I
struggle
had,
too.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
had a really hard time sustaining my attention.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Hmm.
and so like when I'm able to get into a book and really groove with it, it's been very much a delight because there have been moments when I'm like, okay, so I guess reading is broken. Good to know. Um, I'll have to foster my love of television. I don't know. So like, I had for the most part of the pandemic, I had a hard time getting through a movie. So now I'm able to sit through a movie and I'm able to read books again, and I feel like my attention span is healing. It's knitting
Mhm.
back together. It's kind of like Kitsuga, pottery. It's got little gold threads through it. It's fractured, but it's holding water again.
It's an excellent way to describe it. I feel like my reading has been changed. I mean, it's gotten better, like you said, but yeah, it's just not quite what it was before.
Yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the two things, like before that, the thing that really broke reading for me, and it really for a while, was graduate school.
Mm.
Like doing PhD coursework in literature. I was just like, I had a very, very hard time reading fiction and not doing the thing where I was just taking it apart in my head and looking for a paper to write, which is not the most pleasurable way to
Mm-mm.
read a book.
Mm-hmm.
And plus, I had read just so frickin' much, to get through my PhD stuff and my orals and all of that. That there were a couple of years after that when I just was like, if it wasn't 18th century, I wasn't reading it, and it was very painful.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be hard to get over. Do you think that there is a book or an author that everyone should read?
Yeah, I do. I think everybody should read Virginie Despentes' King Kong Theory.
Oh, I've never heard of it.
She's a French writer. She's about my age. She's like 57, 58. Her first big thing was first the book and then the movie, Basez-moi. King Kong Theory is I would say half memoir, half manifesto
Mm-hmm.
about her time as a young French girl, a punk, a sex worker, a freak. It's powerful, important, life-changing writing,
Oof.
and I can't believe it took me as long as it did until, like a friend put it in my hands. It's like, look, just read it. Just read it. And I did in 6 hours. I sat down, I
Wow.
started it, and I didn't, and I read it all the way through. So yeah, King Kong Theory is the book that I think everybody should read.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. I
Wow.
love hearing about books that that have just never come across our radar, Erin. That's really
Yeah,
exciting. Yeah.
it is my favorite. We spend a lot of time like buying and putting books on our library list after these interviews.
Yes,
I'll
we
bet.
do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I
well,
love
for me, the dangerous
it.
thing, do you use Kindles or electronic reading?
Aaron
Yeah,
does. I'm much
So,
more
yeah.
physical, but yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you know BookBub?
I've heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
So they send you an email every day. You choose like writers and genres you're interested in, and you get this like compendium of like 8 books every day that's like highly discounted ebooks. So like,
Oh,
yeah, it's like, $2, $3,
Ooh, this is going to be
yeah.
dangerous.
Yeah.
Aaron, you're gonna regret this
Um,
moment. Yeah,
I am.
yeah.
Well, and
but you can also, like I put Jenny Offel's Weather on my list, and it came up today. It was like, I think it was $1.99. So of course I
That's
bought it.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can put things on your wish list, and then when it comes in, it tells you.
Well, I know what I'm doing the rest of the day.
Yep.
Well, at the end of our episodes, we talk about what our current pop culture obsession is. Do you have a current pop culture obsession?
I'm in one of those weird spaces where I finished one and I don't have another.
Yes.
During COVID, when I had COVID, I finished watching all of here in Sweden. The Blacklist is on Netflix. So, it was like sitting down and committing to a classic 22 episode, season is so overwhelming unless you have some weird sickness that's keeping you bedridden for 2.5 weeks. So I watched that, and then I just recently watched the Halston show on Netflix.
How was that?
It was okay.
Yeah. Okay. I've been seeing middling reviews. Yeah.
I mean, kind of the best things about it are the clothes and certain things that like really evoked a time period and a moment for me. Like there's one scene where Ewan McGregor's Halston is just covering his face in Clinique liquid bronzer, and like every gay dude I knew in the 80s just like liberally coated their bodies in this Clinique stuff, like they would buy it in these giant, like go to the beauty supply houses and buy these like they were industrial sized vats of. So there was that, like there are these moments that were like, oh right, this is a thing that is, really epitomizes this one particular spot in time.
Yeah.
There are things I kind of dip into and enjoy, but nothing right now that I'm obsessed with. So I'm taking suggestions. So if you or anybody else wants to offer something for my newest obsession, please lay it on me.
That's a good point. I'm in a weird hole myself, and now I'm just rewatching like shows that I'm rewatching Alias from 20 years ago, and it's gratifying, but also reminds me like, oh, it's been 20 years. So there's that.
Yeah.
What are you watching, Erin?
Yeah.
I'm watching Mr. Robot because you told me to. So
you are.
We're deep into that right now. Yeah, which is great. Yeah, but I'm in that weird attention span still where I can do like 1-2 episodes and then we have to,
I watched the first 2 seasons of that and then I tapped out.
So sorry, no real recommendations.
But we'll, but
we'll
I
be on the
mean,
lookout.
feel free to keep in touch and, let me know if anything comes across.
We'll shoot you some. Yeah,
that would be cool.
Excellent. Well, those were our questions, Chelsea. This was so much fun. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for liking the book and recommending it. It really means a lot to me as a, debut author and with a small press and it coming out on December 1st and weird time for books.
Yes,
so
but I can't wait until you can see it in bookstores and touch and lick and do all the things you want to do.
Yeah, there will. Yeah, I'm gonna just fondle a pile of my books in the corner of McNally Jackson. I'm sure they'll be very, very pleased.
Yeah.
Who's
that in the corner? Oh, it's the author. Yeah.
That's normal.
Oh, Erin.
What a delight.
What a delight.
I want to point out that after this interview, she said on social media she wasn't sure if we were just nice hosts or she was hilarious. Yeah. And we hope this now convinces everyone that
friggin' hilarious.
So funny. We had so much fun during this interview.
And also I love that she took to Twitter to just be like, I could be, fully deluded.
Yes.
That I'm hilarious.
But
and
I think I
said,
am.
No.
You are. Yeah. Fully hilarious.
I like that. I mean, just her childhood sounds real good.
Yes.
I like that she connected to books on such a level and that she was terrified of books too, particularly the Grimm's fairy tales that she buried in the woods.
That's One of my favorite stories I've ever heard.
I did really enjoy like watching your face during the interview, and maybe you did mine too, because there were many moments of like, of course you buried it in the woods.
Yeah.
And then you went back to get it and it wasn't dirty because, you know, that's what
we
were
it is.
dealing with.
Yes. It was like a moment of shock, understanding, and also this is like I'm looking at a unicorn, like a rare, amazing
rare,
thing.
Beautiful unicorn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Speaking of, creepy places,
Yeah.
her Hamlet soliloquies in the cemetery.
As one does.
As one should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that she was like, yeah, I was fully goth before goth was really a thing.
Amazing.
Yeah, you were.
You were.
Fully. I like that she just basically just said fuck right off to the whole white male canon, particularly a few authors. But, when we extended it to the canon, she's like, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's it.
fine.
Yeah.
I'm on board with that. I loved that she talked about the process of this book and that it took her a while to get this out because she was just doing her thing in her 20s and 30s. And so it took a while because I like that as a story. I like that as inspiration. And I think that's so important to hear that there's no timeline for anything.
Yes.
We put these arbitrary timelines on everything. And
Yeah.
this is a perfect example. Like this book is genius, brilliant. And the only sad part about that is that we didn't get it earlier.
Right.
But if it took her...
But it took her a while to get
Yes.
here. And I love that idea. Yeah, because especially in the book world, you hear constantly about like the, 5 under 35
Yes.
and the top writers in their 20s. And that's all great. But some of us need some extra time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like that she very clearly laid out what she wants from books.
Yes.
She wants to be surprised. She doesn't like just a lot of interior stuff happening. Makes great sense. She wants her murder. She wants her magic. She wants her deviance. That is basically the category I think we're all looking for.
And I don't think I've heard like the need for crime and true crime described that way,
Yeah.
that it isn't necessarily the crime. It's that I just like deviance. And when
Yeah.
she said that, I was like, you know what?
That's it. That's it.
That is really the best explanation / definition that I've ever heard. It was right on.
Yeah.
Which, talking about books, that influenced her when she said that Eat, Pray, Love, but she only got through the first two. And
Yeah.
American Psycho.
Yeah, it was a
To
great
put those
combo.
two together.
Great combo. She got the eat, the pray. She didn't want to get into the love. I appreciate that.
I do
think
too.
That's great.
I do too. And I
Yeah.
love the idea because we've all been very familiar with that book. Like, nah, I just took these two parts.
I love to, as we mentioned, at the time of the recording, she hadn't been able to see her book in a bookstore. She was in
Yes.
Sweden. She was still pandemic. But after the interview, she showed proof on her social media of seeing it out in the wild. And it must have been just a wonderful experience to be able to do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I can't, obviously not a feeling I can speak to, but I can only imagine how fulfilling and wonderful that is. And I hope
Yeah.
it was as great of an experience as it was for us.
Yeah.
Being able to touch it.
Man, I feel like I would be her. Just be like, hey, this is mine.
Yes.
Do you want this book? This is a good book. This is mine. Feel it. Touch it.
Touch it. You need to take off the cover and really feel the other. It's
Just trust me.
just trust us.
Yeah.
Trust us. Yes. Overall, this interview was so funny, so refreshing. Just a savage wit. We just loved her.
it.
We talked
Yes.
quite a few times about how much we love her.
Yes. Yeah. And I hope that she feels the same way and that she's
do
our best
too.
friend.
Well,
I mean,
it's happening. So she likes deviance. So
here we are.
I hope that includes stalking. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, guess what? We will be back next Wednesday with our regular weekly themed episodes.
In the meantime, happy reading.